world isn't just in front of your keyboard, and when you step back, you actually get to see the world. So I started creating things that I encountered in the almost 20 years experience in working legal and compliance field on the in-house side of things. It's a unique skill or unique observation that I have that I can bring to the table to have those conversations with the managers. I am almost like one of them. If you want people to talk about compliance and be interested in the topic, you have to make it about them. You have to learn to sell compliance.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. Welcome to the award-winning FCPA Compliance Report, the oldest podcast in compliance. If you haven't done so, I hope you will check out my latest podcast, AI Today in 5, where I look at 5 top AI and compliance stories. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. I am absolutely thrilled today to have with me Evie Wentink. Evie, first of all, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here. I feel like a lot has changed since you and I spoke the last time, so I'm really happy to be here and tell you all about it.
So, Evie, as you know, I have a podcast called Innovation and Compliance, and innovation can come in many ways. But what intrigues me the most and why I wanted to visit with you is the innovations you have engaged in. Since you really started out on your own, you've done multiple social media offerings. You've been on a podcast before with me. You've talked about your compliance background professionally, but you've taken really that to the next level. And I don't want to say you've reinvented Evie, but what I see is an evolution. So maybe if you could bring us kind of up to date over the last year and what you have going on now and why you're so excited about it.
Okay, let's dive into it. So last year, as you know, we talked about a little bit, I found myself in the space of what I called myself a free agent. I was told that my position relocated or was restructured, and then I was here. So first thing that I realized that I want people who found themselves in the same space to realize that the world isn't just in front of your keyboard. And when you step back, you actually get to see the world. So what happened to me was I saw the world of LinkedIn, and I remember sharing one post when I insinuated that, I was restructured and now I am looking for the next opportunity, although I didn't know what it was, that led to connections with other people. But I feel like number one thing was I didn't want to have my kids to see me be upset about losing a job because, yes, of course, it could be very upsetting. So I said, it's not going to break me. I am going to do something amazing. And in my heart, I felt just that. So I started creating things that I thought about, things that I encountered in the almost 20 years experience in working legal and compliance field on the in-house side of things, many lessons learned, and I started writing it down and creating a lot of different posts. I started this group that I call the Ethics Club because I, want people to feel comfortable talking about ethics. I trademarked a phrase that says, let's talk about ethics. And I created this little journal with my photos. I love photography. I love taking pictures, but I also think people in the compliance and most of all outside of compliance need to have daily inspiration about always doing the right thing, because sometimes it's way easy to do the wrong thing. So if we can keep being inspired every day with little quotes, I love that, and I do that myself. I read quotes all the time. I started posting those quotes on LinkedIn on Tuesdays as the little inspirations that get some traction. And, also a lot of self-development in which I take a lot of training and I learn a lot of different things. I recently sat through a training that had to do with AI. That was the foundations course through organization called For Humanity. I am beginning to take an AI's auditor course and hopefully become certified in that, because I think there is a disconnect between AI and ethics, and to make sure it is good for humans. So more of us who can have this conversation and participate in that is only great. I participate a lot of times on Nick Gallo's ethics verse and gained a lot of CEUs so that I can take the CCEP international certification, which I did in March. So I think a lot of inspiration, education, a lot of writing, and now it's turning into more me being asked presenting at companies. I've came back to Ethico a couple times. I was just there last week on having a conversation with Ryan Carrier on AI and ethics, and we were invited to go back on the right after the episode. So that's amazing. It's going, next part will be coming up. Um, and just helping people and organization. And probably one of the most exciting thing is I rewrote, updated, whatever you want to call it, this program that I call the Integrity Playbook. And we talk about our middle managers as being really the ones who hold the key to success of the compliance program. Yet we don't spend time on telling them what it means. Many companies, the companies we deal with, have beautiful codes of conduct with pictures and scenarios, and they're just pretty publications. Within those codes, they also have a paragraph that talks about if you are the ethics leader, you are, or I'm sorry, if you are the manager, you are our ethics leader. And then there is silence. So I fill the silence with the program that really educates the managers on what it means, what is the compliance program and what do you have to do, what the expectation is. And it boils down to having conversations with their employees on any and all issues that come from the compliance program to headlines, whatever happens, like just being able to have those conversations. And when you're done with those conversations, you listen to see what they say, what the feedback is, and learning how to act based on what they say. Don't leave it alone. So I'm super excited that there's companies that are welcoming that kind of training program for their managers, and that's where I see my path going. But all of that has been very exciting, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity.
Evie, if our listeners don't remember, you are not a lawyer by professional training. And so, but you have done a lot of professional training for others when you were in the in-house world. And so one of the things that intrigued me the most was the differences in our perspectives. Obviously, I'm a lawyer by professional background, so I look at things through that lens, but you're not, so you don't. And I've always thought that there was almost a gap in our training because we didn't have people like yourself who came up through the ranks and could sit down with the middle manager and say, I've sat in your seat. I know what you're missing. I know what you need, and really have that conversation. And is that one of the I don't want to say services, it's almost skills. Is that one of the skills you're bringing in this next evolution and in your consulting practice, that real difference?
I think that's exactly what it is, just because I am not an attorney. I also recognize, attorneys, while they are in their roles as compliance officers, they're generally attorneys first, and they mostly operate in the C-suite level or the vice president's level. So they don't get to have these conversations with the managers. I feel like it's more natural for me to have those conversations. And, it's not just managers, it's employees of any levels. And just to see how I've had in the past, even when I was in-house working in the role of compliance director, I worked with the managers, I worked with the finance managers, I worked with the HR managers, and I learned, or Eve IT, whatever department it was, and I learned a lot about what they were doing, and they felt comfortable. They didn't really feel threatened. So I think it's a unique skill or unique observation that I have that I can bring to the table to have those conversations with the managers, because like you said, I am almost like one of them, except my specialty is compliance, not not their operation per se. So I think that's certainly helpful to get the message across because I can speak to them, like them, and with them.
How do you have that same conversation, not with middle managers, but with the rank and file employees? How do you have the conversation with them to have the courage to raise their hand and speak up? Or do you really have to start that conversation with middle managers? But how do you really convince the people under them that they're the key to a speak up culture because they're the ones on the front line who are seeing everything?
I think you need to have both of those conversations. You need to have the middle managers to be ready to receive it, and whatever complaint or question or issue comes in, that they know how to act on it and where to go and how to provide the answer. So we, in a way, have to educate the middle managers on all those things because the worst thing that could happen is you tell employee, your ranking file employees to speak up and nothing happens. And then they lose trust in the system. So that's not good. So it's almost, you have to educate your managers first. So in my program, we go through it. We talk about open door policy and what it means, right? Like I talk about having different visuals to invite the conversation into the to just welcome the conversation in the office. So if you have something like this in your office, an employee has a question on their mind regarding conflict of interest, and you have somewhere conflict of interest, they would be like, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can have this conversation. And then the manager has to understand what it is and what to do about it. And if they don't know, it's okay. Nobody knows everything, not even us as professionals know everything. You can just say, I'll get back to you and find out what that is, but then make sure that they get back to them. And of course, promote the hotline because sometimes employees don't feel comfortable speaking to someone depending on what the issue is. But it's part of the education, it's part of the culture. It's not one and done kind of a meeting. We really have to work at it one day at a time. I recently made a post about going to the gym. So I started going to the gym, and the beginning is hard and you are in pain. And month goes by and you don't see any difference. And now it's month later and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I feel different and I look a little different, but it's all little subtle. So it's the same thing with the compliance program. You have to implement these um, just practices and make your everyday decision making process, and maybe it will look like nothing's happening but really something is happening, but it just takes time for you to see the results. And that's why, like I said before, staying inspired is part of it. Having conversations with the managers, it's part of it, or I'm sorry, with the employees, just being open. But it can be only at that level. I think it has to be at any level. So almost the same training you would want to do with your middle managers, your C-suite should get too. They're not immune. Like it should be, from all levels of compliance. And the board as well, where recently I wrote an article and I pointed your note in there that you wrote about the same issue 10 years ago, where we said we wanted, this is funny, you're laughing. We said we wanted someone from compliance expertise to have a seat on the board of directors, right? Because to me, so you don't know what you don't know. That's one big saying, right? How are they supposed to know how to approve, talk about, influence compliance programs when they don't really understand what it means? So recently I had actually she had a brilliant idea. Recently I had a conversation with a colleague and she said maybe the board of directors should be invited to one of those conferences like compliance officers do, so they can at least get a flavor. I would think compliance professionals should be having a seat on the board, at least one. But if you can't, or if it takes too long to get there, because they don't change so frequently, maybe we should encourage them to participate in these compliance industry kind of events so they at least get a flavor for the topic. Because otherwise, how are you supposed to know? Because a lot of it is culture driven, a lot of it is ethics and integrity, and not necessarily the bottom line, the question between what is legal and what is ethical. There is a gray area sometimes there, so they need to be kind of sensitive to those topics, and it goes throughout the entire organization.
Evie, I'd like to change the focus to how you use social media in this. I'm going to call it the evolution of Evie. We met. Actually, we met at a conference, but we had an extended discussion on social media last year when you were on a podcast, and you did several different initiatives. You did some short videos. You did some visuals, as you call them. You always have a visual. Then you continued. You started writing and with a little some posts on LinkedIn. So I would just like to explore with you how you were able to use social media and really help compliance professionals understand this is a tool you can use however you may want to do so, whether it's like yourself, this evolution of Evie, whether it's, well, I just want to put this out there as thought leadership, or whether maybe I want to explore, are there some different ways that I can use things like you've used with your visuals, like a book or a coffee cup or even a cube to communicate something, and just really tell us about the things you've done and how you've been able to literally build this practice in an area that there wasn't before.
I think we have to stay out with the time. So one of the things that I'm also interested in, and I just before we got on published a video that is not easy for me to talk about. So I will have you watch it when we get off, and it had something to do what happened to me. But anyway, there's a lot of young people coming in the workforce, right? And we have to find the way to reach them, make it exciting and interesting. So if you think about it, everyone for the last 5 to 7 years grew up on TikTok and various social media. So how do they learn? How do we attract and make it interesting? And it's no longer, you said that in my introduction, I was responsible for providing training and coordinating training for companies on weekly basis, and what that looked then like then to versus what it looks like now, it's completely different. We had a WebEx that you had an attorney have a presentation and speak. It was more just presentation and questions in the end, which I don't think it would fly the way with the technologies and abilities now. People wouldn't be interested. You find it boring, you turn it off, or you let it play and you do something else. If you want people to really, truly absorb the information, you have to make it interesting. You have to make it personal. Um, you know, I like web services where you can have the chat of the attendees on the side, that they can have a conversation, because the more they have conversations about the topic, they're engaged and they remember more. But that's just one, having conversations. Podcasts, you are great at them. People like to listen to interesting things, especially if they're interested in compliance or whatever. Podcasts are there for a variety of topics. Videos for young people. So what I did just this year is I reached out to a young, I want to say millennial producer, a director slash producer, to create some videos, because I wanted them to be interesting and something that she could say, like, this would be appealing to me. And that's what we did with the video that I released last week, talking about workplace romance and staying off the jumbotrons, to this week I released a video today about sexual harassment and what that looked like in my eyes when I was first starting out. Because one thing I've learned over the last year is, if you want people to talk about compliance and be interested in the topic, whether it's on the employee side or compliance managers, directors, or managers and all, you have to make it about them. You have to learn to sell compliance. And I never ever looked at myself as a salesperson. I would always say, I'm not a salesperson, but I can tell you, and especially with the sexual harassment case that I talk about in my video, is why I think it's important and why I would want my daughter, and I have a 17-year-old daughter, why I would want her to be interested. So if she goes to a place of employment, she should be paying attention to the code of conduct and some of the training and know who the people are if she needed to reach out or where the hotline is. Those are at minimum things that you want them to know. And, we know you give employees a code of conduct book, and what do? They sign for it, and they probably never ever look at it again. So while I was in house, one of the things that I tried to do then was create a monthly compliance communication page that had content from the code, and then I elevated it by including a word game. And then there were prizes if you turned in the word game. And the feedback was very positive. Employees looked at the content. Then the word game had the words from the content in it. So you reinforce the things that you were talking about. And then they had a chance to win a prize. And they would say, "Oh, thanks so much. This is so nice." Like, just it was almost like a brain game. Gave them 5 minutes of a break. It wasn't a difficult one, but I was able to increase the interaction with the employees. So I think doing those kind of things, and now with video, anyone can pick up a phone and create a quick little video on ethics and compliance. Have those contests, like, get engaged, get involved. It's not as hard as you think if you just do it.
So I think I'm going to link to your prior podcast because I want to end by asking you a series of questions about the woman I see in front of me on this screen today, as opposed to the woman a year ago. And you're so much more confident. And you have been on multiple other podcasts. You've talked about Ethico and the ethics verse. And what do you say to, I'm going to ask for women, but maybe it's just the younger compliance professional who may not feel like either they don't have something to say, or more importantly, they're not used to putting themselves out there like you have done over the past year. And the professional growth I see from you as a public communicator, as opposed to, training or your in-house role, is equally as impressive. So how do you encourage others to, do what Evie has done? And what's been your experience, which allows you to now, talk about your new business and talk about all of these strategies? Because I think it's important for people to see women who have grown professionally in the way you have. And also, you're out here now selling your business and you're selling yourself. So could you say a few words about that part of your journey?
Yes. What a great question. Oh, I remember I was so nervous when you asked me to talk, and I had papers and notes everywhere because I was terrified of saying the wrong thing. And if you went back and listened to it, you could tell I was nervous. But I said to myself, if I get invited to something, I will never say no, even though it is, could be very painful and not something that I am used to doing. I will do, and I will try to do my best. So even at that, and I knew um, that I didn't really have confidence to be able to speak about the things that I know. And I think the reason was, and this is what happens in house, you're just stuck in front of your computer and you're doing the work, and you may be doing it well, but you're not forced to do those presentations and have the conversations. I mean, I did little, but not to the extent. And I did it in one company more than in another company. But then I said, I know a lot. So when I would listen to people talk about it, attorneys who are in the general, chief ethics roles or chief compliance officers roles, I'm like, I can keep up. I know this stuff, so why am I so nervous? And I think it just time came to a place that I feel really good, and in my heart I feel really good about the things that I know. I know that I don't know everything, but I am super happy to learn. So to the people who are in the position of not necessarily a program or director or above kind of level, but you are in compliance, you're an analyst, find your groove and talk about it, whether it's in your, in your own group, and write. I think even writing helped me a lot to solidify all the things that I feel that I know from my perspective where we should put energy towards. Um, do all those things and try to participate. And if you get asked to do something, never say no, always do it. I think that that's really important. I can tell you, we were creating the videos and I am not an actor, and I don't it was so hard to do in the way, because I had to smile for 8 hours straight while I was talking, so the videos don't look boring, and that's hard, so see if you can like talk like this for the entire day, but you do what you have to do to get it done, and you take direction from people. I think one of these things that, in all the inspiration for young people, say be coachable. You have to maintain being coachable in order to elevate to the next level, and sometimes you have to be a little uncomfortable, but yeah, definitely, do all those things. Try anything you think can work, and some. Just keep going.
Could we end by you telling us about your new business, your consulting practice, and end with where our listeners could connect with you and or find out more about your consulting practice?
Yes, thank you. So I founded company I call the Ethical Edge Experts, LLC. It's Ethical Edge because I build compliance programs that are human centric. It's for humans to make sure that the entire organization has a great program that, there's the risk management piece. It's part of your brand. It's part of your values. It's part of your culture in every day. And that's where I set myself apart. I really work on the holistic approach of the entire organization, where you can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. There is a way to meet with me, schedule an appointment, or through my website. It's www.ethicaledgeexperts.com, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Well, Evie, this has just been a delightful visit. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thank you so much. Same here. Thank you for having me on again, Tom.
This is Tom Vox again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the award-winning FCPA Compliance Report, the oldest podcast in compliance. I hope you will subscribe, rate, and review wherever great podcasts are listened to. Also, check out some of the other great podcasts on the Compliance Podcast Network.